all, welcome Mr. Chiraag Paul to this episode of Decode. Mr. Chiraag Paul, for everybody here, is the managing director for Pro-M Hospitality, and we can't wait to find out more about him. From what my research, I've found out that he's also been a professional footballer. So it's fascinating to see that you've combined, if I have, if I can say so, the two primary passions for people from Bengal, food and sport. You've kind
Uh-huh.
of combined that and made a living out of both. So really excited to talk to you today on Decode.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on, and I really appreciate the invite.
Awesome. So let's get started. Can you tell us, a little bit about Pro Hospitality and Koshe Kosha in particular?
Sure. Like you said, when it comes to Bengal, or it's not a Bengali thing. I think it's across India as well, and the whole world. Sport and food are unanimous in terms of passions, in terms of things that one would want to do and pursue. I grew up in an environment, I didn't grow up in India. I grew up in Singapore. But I was always told of the stories that my parents grew up with when they were um, growing up in India and Kolkata specifically. So it was always very close to my heart in terms of loving food. And more importantly, the stories in terms of the travels that my father especially had done to enjoy cuisine across the globe, but specifically in Bengal with Bengali cuisine. So even though I might have grown up overseas, I always had an inclination towards food from back in India, specifically the eastern region of India. And I always thought that whenever people talk about Indian food, whether it's at home or abroad, they're usually talking about South Indian or North Indian food. East India is the least represented in that format. And yeah, thus the journey began. It was always our ethos is revolved around building robust cuisines, which are typically not as popular. We want to popularize those cuisines. I think East India as a region has a lot of robust flavors, of spices that the rest of the country needs to, and the rest of the world needs to try out. And that's the journey that we started on, and thus became Pro-M Hospitality.
That's fantastic. And
Hmm.
let's just take a step back and kind of, learn about you. I'm a little fascinated myself because I've lived in Calcutta for a year. I worked in sport for a couple of years. So I'm just
Uh,
going to take this minute to kind of understand your journey. So I think you played for Birmingham City for a couple of years and you went abroad to play professionally. And can you tell me about
yep.
how you transitioned from that sort of life to entrepreneurship? How did your entrepreneurial journey begin?
Well, I think so. My first contract that I actually got involved in when it came to sport in general was in East Bengal. So I spent about a year or so in India before I was transferred to Brazil and subsequently to the UK. So I was very fortunate. This is back in 2005, 2005 2006, where I was selected and taken overseas. So my first tenure outside of India was in Sao Paulo, where I was there for quite a few months. But the learning process through the whole journey of my football career has been extremely important in this journey as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship happened more out of choice. It was something that I've always wanted to pursue. Even after I left football because of injuries, I couldn't continue. Um, I worked in the UK. I was living there, went to university there, but I always knew that I wanted to do something for myself, where it's going to be revolved around the things that I'm passionate about. And food and sport are two of the things which I eventually got into. We started off with food, and I made my way back into Asia. Came into India. That was the first time. This is 7 years ago. That was the first time I actually lived in India properly.
Mhm.
So I was still trying to understand how things work. The language, obviously. I know a bit of Bengali and Hindi, although my friends and colleagues would say I know nothing, but I tend to believe that I do. And just press on from there, to understand the country and where we can actually add value. And I think that journey as a footballer, all the way down to someone who was working in finance and other ventures, up to entrepreneurship, helped me in understanding not so much the challenges, but to sit on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
And to always understand that this is not something you need to bring in, not just passion, but acumen in terms of understanding where the business is headed, but also understand the importance of people, that people drive ventures. It's not you as an individual. We we even though in India family businesses are very common, we don't typically come from one. I didn't really have that sort of to build out of, but what was more important is we had a very strong base in understanding that food can be taken to the next level. So I think that's in a nutshell the sort of journey I've transitioned into. I mean, I can go on for hours in terms of the challenges, but
it's well summarized and sets good context for this conversation. When I was looking at your website, I've not actually had the chance to eat at Koshe Kosha, but I read that it's known for its distinct Bangaliana, if I'm saying that right. So can you tell the audience a little bit about what that means? And even while you were moving back to India, right, I'm sure you had help, from some people, maybe some friends or someone who also helped you kind of understand that, right? So can you tell us a little bit about, the Bangaliana of it?
Sure, of course. I mean, look, Bengalis are typical. There's this cliche that Bengalis are all about fish and sweets. The truth is we are, but there's much more to that as well. So I think Bangaliana is a term which is best described in not just words, but it's a feeling, it's an emotion. It's about not just being a Bengali, but being part of the whole essence of where we come from. I think my journey in that started, again, very young, from listening to my parents and their stories. And my father's journey as a child to travel to Shambajar, which is an area in Kolkata, and to eat kosha mangsho, and save up money to try cuisines on the road, road food and everything on those front. And coming from a very middle class background, it's ingrained in your memory in terms of these sort of journeys that my parents had, and subsequently when we went into the venture, that was a big motivation to ensure that the distinct flavors and the classic flavors in the sense of what presents Bangaliana. So kosha mangsho is what we are typically known for in Koshe Kosha. So it's not fish, it's not sweet, it's something different, and you wouldn't relate to that. So over the course of the last couple of years, 6-7 years, we've expanded the menu and we've got the whole suite of Bengali cuisine now. But the journey began from something as simple as that, was in order to try and get kosha mangsho across. And I think my parents really helped me on that journey.
The menu was also just limited to very simple kosha mangsho and pulao. That's fascinating.
Yes.
Is it still a combination you guys serve? And is it common? Like, do people come in and be like, I want that OG combo of sorts,
It's still our bestseller. It's still what defines us. We haven't touched the menu since day one. We've been very clear in terms of, if this is working, we will keep making sure that our customers and our patrons continue appreciating it. And that was the essence of Bangaliana. We still cook in a very traditional manner when it comes to especially the kosha mangsho. There was, in terms of what you were asking previously with people around me, I think my family played a big influence in terms of how we led things. Operationally, we had a very strong team. Today, right now, in terms of operations, it's led but by my mama. He's obviously grown up and born in the country and the city, so he knows the city really well. And contrary to me, when I was coming in, I didn't know as much. So there was a lot of insights that we could bounce off each other, including however the team is set up today. But yes, it is even till this date, people walk into our restaurants, and that's what they're usually typically looking for: kosher mangsho and pulao or baked paratha. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And, you know, like you've been around the world, and I think one thing that you said that does resonate is Calcutta is one place where there is a very distinct culture, and you really need to soak it in. So I'm sure your, the experiences that your mama had also really like has added to the brand. So what I'm,
Of course, yeah.
yeah, what I'm fascinated to understand is, I'm assuming a large part of the early experiences were people walking into your store and just placing an order, eating it hot, served to them right on the table. And I'm sure your
Hmm.
brand has had to pivot at some point to delivery, right?
Hmm.
Especially the last 12, 18 months and so on. So when did you guys first start thinking about delivery, and how do you aim to provide the same experience at home?
Well, so I think we started thinking of this model not by choice. We thought about it from a business perspective initially. So our cuisine space is still limited to people's understanding as to what we do. We're not selling Italian food, nor are we selling Chinese or roadside food. Cuisines which are popular or North Indian. It's different. We're not selling biryani either, where people know what the product is about.
Yeah.
We're in a space where people don't quite know exactly as yet, unless you're Bengali or have lived in that region. You don't quite know. So for us, before we even get into delivery or anything else, what was very important is to understand that the best way for us to educate the market was to scatter ourselves and litter ourselves as in many places as possible. So our business model from day one was very clear. We're not going to have large restaurants where we might be able to accommodate more people. We would rather invest that same amount of energy, money, and people across a variety of restaurants and become a chain. So then what became clear to us is we're educating people about not just the name, but what we do. And most importantly is we're closer to their homes. So if there ever came a point where they don't want to dine in a Koshe Kosha, which is possible, our model was very clear. We don't want them to always come into the restaurants to dine in.
Yeah.
We want to be close enough for them where we can do delivery. So deliveries actually happened as a byproduct of the business plan. We were very clear that, okay, this is how we're going to pursue the brand, and this is how we're going to take it to the next level in terms of scale. So that's when we started centralizing how we are actually producing the produce in terms of procurement, in terms of some of the dishes actually being centrally cooked and then being sent out to all the restaurants. And this is the same for every single city we've gone into, which has more than one or two restaurants. So that is kind of the journey that we took when it came to the delivery model. Subsequently, obviously, over the last 2 years and even prior to that, we learned that that was quite a wise thing to do. We're not restricted when it comes to one or two restaurants and the wider context of delivery within that. So you're looking at 5 to 8 to 10 kilometers within that restaurant, right? Just because we've spread ourselves out, we can now cater to a wider audience. So yes, COVID has kind of, in a very, in hindsight, in a very nuanced way, has sealed that business plan for us. We know that we are on the right model in order to reach out to more people. But it didn't start from the perspective of trying to get deliveries out. It started from the perspective of educating the client and the consumer that, hey, this is what Bengali food is about. This is what East Indian food is about.
I think you'll be fascinated to, kind of hear that. So today, while I was looking up your brand and I was looking at your website, I opened one of the menus, and I've always had like a confusion on what jal is and what jol is, or what the words. But today you had like an explainer on the first page, right? So
Yeah.
I think it was a light stew, but jol was more spicy, right? So I think even with the menus, you guys are actually educating customers to this date. So that's great to hear. And just picking up from a point you mentioned that you guys have expanded beyond Kolkata, beyond West Bengal. My colleague on the call, Varun, I think he's eaten at your outlet in Bangalore. So now, when you guys consider, expanding this brand, right? What are some of the factors what do you look at in a region when you say, hey, that's where I want to go next?
I think the first thing we obviously look at, we've got demographics, so we need to look at what kind of people, who our audience would be. When we first started out, we thought our audience was essentially going to be all Bengalis. People who are Bengalis who live in other cities and in other places, and that's what we're going to pursue, and that's what we're going to go after. Very, very, very quickly, we realized that regional cuisine was becoming more popular, and it's not about people were more open to experimenting. And I think this is the change that India has seen. It's not just in the food that we consume in this day and age, but technology, travel, even digital payments, everything has changed over the last 5 years within the country, right? COVID or no COVID. So I think our first port of call in terms of assessing a new city or a new state is who our audience might be. So we look past the Bengaliness in the beginning, and now we're looking at other aspects in terms of which is actually equally important in terms of produce. Can we actually get the right produce to get the right raw materials to produce this kind of cuisine? Because we want to remain as authentic as ever. We do not want to cut corners. We do not want to get substandard quality of raw material at any point. So any city we go into, those two would be the first. And the third step would obviously be, in terms of manpower. Are we actually looking at people locally? Usually, typically, what we do is we have our core team sent from our head offices in Kolkata, and they are always based out of whichever city we're in or we're looking to expand into. And we have a very strong local team, because when we're looking to get into a new place, we are not thinking about, can we be here for the next 5 years or 10 years? We want to build a legacy. We want to be here for the next 50 years or longer. So in that sense, you need people. That's my previous point. People is key. So I think these three elements are very important. Who your audience is in terms of procuring raw material. And the third is the people that we can potentially get. After all of this, then we look into financials and all of the other things in order to understand what that is. But our ethos and our premise and our foundation is very clear that, we've got to hit these three things, then we would consider a city.
I think amazing. Thanks for that. There was some serious insight to a lot of people who watch this show, and I'm glad that you summarized it in 3 points that anyone can take away. Now, I want to understand about marketing. So when you guys started out, how did you think about marketing, and what is something new you guys tried? I think everyone is trying new things in marketing. Some people are hitting up influencers. Some people are putting up their kitchen on display online. Have you guys tried something recently in marketing, and what's been your overall strategy?
So we actually recently opened, so I'll talk about what we previously did. Previously, what we believed in was quite old-fashioned in terms of word-of-mouth marketing, which still exists today. But it was more in lines with, okay, can we get leaflets out, and get as many people to know who we are about, what we can do, what is the product that we are actually selling. We did a lot of tasting menus where we would send small items to, say, regular consumers and customers. And I think what we've been able to, Kaushal, over the last 2-3 years, especially during COVID, what we've been able to understand is it's more about retention for us as opposed to acquisition. So our marketing is centric towards ensuring that the people who love us already are happy, and we're acquiring new people on that journey through that process. Retention is more important to us, or at least equally important. So we want to listen into our consumers and what they want and market to them in that particular way. Now we need to use social and digital, and we have been for the last several years very actively in terms of our marketing front. But I think the metric for the marketing team has been very clear from our perspective, that you need to ensure that the guys who are loving you continue loving, and if they don't, why do they not? And in that journey, you're going to have these particular influencers who, to me, particularly are the influencers we want, that they go out and speak to people, and they actually influence, and they can get them through the door. And I think over the course of COVID, we have understand the importance of retention more than ever before, because all of a sudden hygiene was always a priority with not just us but with everyone within the industry. But hygiene became 10 times more of a priority, and what you would typically associate hygiene with, fortunately or unfortunately, were brand names. The ones that you've heard of, you would automatically believe that they're hygienic and they're following protocols. The ones who are new entrants into the industry might not have had that pleasure. So it gave us a very good insight into how people perceived us. That really helped us in our marketing effort. Right. So COVID actually helped us a lot in understanding where we stand as a brand on that front. And something new that we've actually tried through this period is, obviously we have side menus that go out on a sort of seasonal basis and those sort of things. But there's always a front that we thought initially that in order to get the brand and a very recognized platform, you need to be on the high street, you need ridiculously long frontage, all of that. You need the glitz and the glam, brilliant lighting and everything on those fronts. We actually took a risk in the beginning of COVID where we got a new location. One of our this was our 15th restaurant that we opened.
Where was that? Calcutta. And
this was in Kolkata. In Kolkata, this was in a place called Goria. Okay. And in Goria, we are not on the front. We are not on the high street. We are in a gully towards the end of the gully on a ground floor property. And what we took it up as a challenge that, and there was a lot of healthy debate within the team that, should we do this? Should we not do this? The bottom line was we wanted to see if the brand actually was being able to attract people, even though the location wasn't common. So we did a lot of marketing events around that. Initially, it didn't start off very well, and we thought that, okay, we might have made a mistake, go back to something old. But honestly, over the last few months and longer, it's really picked up. It's becoming one of our top sellers, and it's a beautiful property. If you're ever in Kolkata, I'd love to take you. I mean, and anywhere else anyway. But the insight from that really came out in terms of brand building and marketing is that it's not always about the frontage. It's not always about where you're located or anything as such. It's about the product and how quickly can you get it out to the consumer and get them to know that you are existing in this area. It's about brand building in the beginning, where frontage and those sort of things come in handy, location, etc. But I think we are evolved into a space now where we are reasonably known within the industry, and we can now push on and really try and leverage whatever brand value we have. And I think that's where we stand today.
I think lots of fascinating insight. One was, of course, what you said at the beginning, retention versus acquisition. I mean, everyone's heard of maybe the 80-20 rule, and what you've spoken to essentially is that, right? And essentially, and what I also appreciate what you said was that everyone's an influencer now, especially when it comes to food, right? I mean, I don't think people realize how much influence they have over other people. Like, you're probably part of 10 WhatsApp groups which have 8 to 10 members. You're influencing 50 people on a daily basis. So if you as Koshe Kosha can provide a good experience, I'm sure they're going and telling those people. And I think finally people are also want to, find good experiences. And it's not so much about the location anymore. That location of yours in Garia might actually be prompting more people to go there. So it's really fascinating.
I think what was very key to us, and people often talk about the Pareto principle of 80-20 and everything else, but then turning theory into practice is very different, and it's very difficult. And I think, and this is hats off to our marketing guys. They work day in, day out in ensuring that we're actually following up on it. We still have a long way to go. I don't think we're there yet, which is always a good thing. There's more. We shift the goalpost whenever we're close to the goal. But what is important is that we follow that principle. The guys who have actually walked through the door are your consumers that you need to ensure are happy and keep coming back. And by coming back, I don't mean literally into the restaurant, but keep ordering from you, and you have some level of communication with them. And the new clients and the new customers will come through. A lot of it will be based on that word of mouth, or more importantly, they've maybe crossed your restaurant or heard about it, and that's how we intend to pursue marketing moving forward as well. Retention, as important as acquisition.
Moving on from marketing to another topic that a lot of restaurateurs kind of want to hear about nowadays, which is technology, right? At what point did you realize that technology is going to be a serious part of your business? When did you start investing in tech? It could be to maybe manage your data, it could be for whatever you use tech for, but when did you realize tech has to be one of the main pillars of your business, along with location and staff and ingredients? When was that?
I think we began that journey in looking at tech very early on, when we started Prime Hospitality, I think in 2014, 2015. So Prime Hospitality is a group company in terms of we've got several brands. Koshe Kosha is our most popular brand. So we've got restaurants and bars across the country on that format, and currently we're operating about 5 brands that exist within the group. Koshe Kosha obviously has the largest volume and the number of restaurants in it. What became very important for us when we were trying to centralize things and create the office to our headquarters was to see everything under one roof, to really understand how things are working, and where it became very important that we didn't need to travel down to the restaurant to take decisions, as opposed to sit out of the head office and take decisions very quickly.
Yeah,
that's where technology started coming in, which is why I say that we started that journey quite early, but we didn't really take a decision till about 2016 or 2017. We were still, because in the beginning it was always about building the brand. The brand wasn't where it is today, right? It was always about, we didn't have marketing budgets where we can put ourselves up on billboards. We didn't have marketing budgets where we could bring in a lot of influencers. Social media was not the same back then, even if you're talking about 5-6 years ago. And we didn't have budgets to open up stores in brilliant locations either. We had to do with what we had, which was very limited. So initially it was always about, can we open up in different places? Whatever money we've raised, can we split it up and really push it out? Educate the client in that sense. You bring up a very good example in terms of how we've designed the menu to try and make people, whether they're Bengali or non-Bengali, does not make a difference, whether you're from the country or not.
Right, and that's a big problem. I want a new experience, but it sounds good, and I probably struggle to tell the waiter how I pronounce it, right? But,
exactly.
Good question.
Yeah, so that's what we were trying to do, and I think so. Tech played a big role around that point of time, where we started getting in a centralized system, an ERP, which is integrated into POS, and then around the same time, obviously deliveries started happening, right? It started pumping up in terms of that, and I think this is the beauty of India. I think when I moved to India in 2014 versus now in 2021, and we've worked across different states and different cities, they all behave as different countries. There's no similarities on that front. But more importantly is people are diverse in their use of technology. I mentioned, when we talk about the delivery aggregators, we also need to mention about the payment vendors, the digital payment vendors. Those guys have done a brilliant job themselves, to move to such a space where it allows businesses like us to operate and bring in a new revenue stream. So I think it was very important for us to adopt technology very quickly. Again, I don't think we're still there yet. I think we can do much better as an organization. We are quite data-centric. We preach it and we act upon it. There needed to be a change in mindset in order to be data-centric. I think we're there in terms of facts. Decisions are now made based on data as opposed to anything gut feel. And that's how we pursue new locations, new people, new items in the menu, etc., etc. So technology plays a big role. It will continue to play a big role, and it allows us to maybe assess our roadblocks a bit quicker. And I think that's what I have been the most pleased with in terms of the technology adoption that we've had.
Yeah. I mean, I like the fact that you mentioned the thought process behind it, right? Because typically people say tech for the sake of tech, right? But you gave us your reasons behind it. So I'm sure that added a lot of value, to everyone watching. Now I'm moving to the section which we typically have towards the end of an episode, which is a rapid fire. So
Okay.
some very simple questions for you to answer. So
Sure.
started. All right. I think this first one, I might have an idea of what you might answer, but what's your favorite item on your menu at Koshe Kosha?
Right. This is so you're right. I think it'll be two of them. I really like the lal keema that we do, and obviously the kosher mangsho. But I have to say this, especially for the viewers, the best thing we actually cook is not even on the menu. I don't think we've been able to put it out as yet, in my opinion. We have a fish, which is small fish in Bengal. It's called loita mach, and we do that brilliantly. But the thing is, it's very spicy. So the palate might not be as suiting, especially when we go outside of West
Are you going
Bengal.
to add that to your menu soon?
I've always wanted to, but I'm not quite sure if we're going to be able to. But yeah, I mean, there's another one which I really like, which is called the Malai Chinguri Biryani. So it's biryani, but it's not the typical biryani. Rather than using water, so Bengalis have a very we love prawns, and prawns cooked in coconut milk is called Malai Chingri. So what we've done is we've made a biryani out of it, where the malai is actually used instead of water to boil the rice. So and we provide that on the side. So that's something that I would really recommend.
My mouth
We
is
do really
watering a
well.
little hearing all of that, but I'm like going to quickly move on to the next.
Yeah, it is mine as well. But yeah, go on.
Uh, Profitability or growth?
Growth any day.
How often do you order from outside yourself?
Uh, I travel a lot, so I often I order very often. I would say obviously not during COVID, but I'm usually on the road between 20 to 25 days in a month, if not more. So I order quite often. I mean, I do cook as well, but yes, I do order often.
Do you have a favorite cuisine?
Oh, I've got so many. It's difficult, but no, I would say after East Indian, and when I say East India, I'm not just talking about Bengali. I'm genuinely talking about Northeast and everything else that comes with it. Japanese, I really really like Japanese. I love Southeast Asian food, having grown up there as well. So yeah, I think those would be my top three.
All right. What are your thoughts on getting an MBA versus getting work experience?
Work experience any day. I don't have an MBA, and it's not that it's not like it makes a difference if I have it or not. But what I'm trying to say is, getting work experience is something which gives you real world understanding of what the problems are. What we're essentially trying to do is to fit in, is to bridge a gap. If you're someone who likes to who knows the problem and is finding a solution, that's fair. I think a lot of the world moves in that direction, and that's where getting education that would help really really aids your journey. But if you're someone who's not been able to find a problem statement, but you're trying to identify that, then what you're essentially trying to do is you're creating the pie. You're not becoming a piece of the pie, right? And that only comes from experience. That only comes from putting yourself in very difficult situations, and understanding where you've gone wrong and how you might do things better in future. So personally, work experience any day.
All right. This one might be a little easy, but favorite sport?
Football, but I would say cricket along with it. We run a tech company called Sports Analytics as well. So we're very involved in the tech side. running analytics and data. And so sport has always been, like I said, it's part of my life. But yes, number one would be football, by far. Yeah.
All right, a favorite sportsman? If you ever had one, maybe you modeled your game around him growing up.
Yeah, that's actually, people who know me, that they know this is very easy. It's a guy called Paul Scholes. He used to play in centre midfield for Manchester United back in the day, and I think a lot of how I tried to play, I was trying to emulate how he played. I was probably, there's no comparison, like one hundredth of that ability, or even further less. But it was always very important to see how he played and how he took on difficult circumstances, even though the team was always doing well. I think this is a learning that sport had given me also through the last 18 to 24 months, is to, when the going gets tough, when you're in extra time, when you're a couple of goals down and you really need to push on, that is when you start playing. It's not the 90 minutes prior to that. So I think that's where we were. We still are in that sort of a mode, survive, but thrive in survival mode. That's been our motto for the last 24 odd months. But yeah, sorry, yeah, that's a bit of a long-winded answer. But yeah, Paul Scholes would be my favorite.
Good choice. Favorite city in the world?
Oh God.
All tough.
I would probably say it's tied between London and Sydney.
Okay.
But yeah, those two. Okay. London maybe just edges it. Yeah.
Last two. Favorite movie, if you have one.
Favorite movie. I've got a few, but I think one that really resonated with me is Satyajit Ray's first trilogy, the Opu Shangsha trilogy, which is obviously a great when it comes to Bengali cinema. And I think apart from that, I've really enjoyed watching Christopher Nolan over the last couple of movies that he's done. Not so much the last one, maybe that was a bit off, but yeah, but it's been very intriguing to understand the storyline and try and assess that and bring it into a commercial perspective. So yeah, I would say those would be classics which I would go back to at any given point of time.
All right, last one, a book that you read recently that inspired you, motivated you, moved you.
There are quite a few, but I would say one would be Dream with Your Eyes Wide Open by Ronnie Screwvala. Yeah, I think that's a very underrated book. I think he's been very unique in terms of his perspective. So from an entrepreneur's perspective, I think that's a very good book to read, especially in this subcontinent context. That's very interesting. Robert Harris has a trilogy called Imperium, which is about Greek sort of mythology, which I think I learned a lot from recently. Yeah, I think these two would be my top ones, which I've read in the recent past. There is another. Sorry, there's another one called the author called William Dalrymple as well. He's written quite a few in Indian history and tried to tie it in with the British context. I think his series of books are also very interesting to pursue.
All right, and finally, before we let you go, I think you've been working with UrbanPiper for about 2 years. Any words on how your experience has been working with the UrbanPiper team?
I think so. I'll be honest on that front. When we initially got into the engagement, we had our reservations. We wanted to, it's a very simple thing from the outside to understand theoretically in terms of integrating delivery services together. It comes on your ERP or POS or whichever we have in our restaurants. And we were really contemplating whether or not this would be something worth it. we decided to take the plunge because we've been open to technology, like I mentioned. And to be very honest with you, it's made a big difference to us in terms of how quickly we can assess things. You know, the integrations, whenever we get any notification, even from a usability factor, I think it has really, and the feedback that we get from the team, the guys who are actually working in the restaurants on a day-to-day basis, and what gets passed on to the operations team is it's made a big difference in terms of how we see orders, how we are actually presenting them, and more importantly, we've become quicker in our process. So now we don't have to not just open several tabs at the same point of time. We can see it all in one go under one roof, and which means productivity is quicker and faster. So we've been quite glad in that journey to learn the product from you guys and then adapt it ourselves and then use it in the best way that we can. You know, tech is always an enabler. Now you need to decide how it enables you. It's not going to enable everyone in the same way. And I think we did that very quickly with UrbanPiper. And we were very, very glad on that front, especially through COVID, where orders and deliveries have obviously been coming through more than anything else. Having UrbanPiper has really helped us more so ever than before.
That's amazing to hear, and that brings a wrap to our chat. I think thank you for taking up your time this afternoon, and just giving us great insight into entrepreneurship, into how you built your brands, and a sneak peek into maybe what the future holds as well. So we wish you the best of luck in all your future endeavors, and thanks once again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be online and speak to you guys as well. So thank you very much. Thanks.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and leave a comment below, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest in the food tech industry with UrbanPiper.